Welcome to our webinar, which is titled How to Optimize Your Global Rollout of CommCare. So my name is Amy Smith. I am the Director of Partnerships for our SaaS team here at Dimagi. And today we'll be hearing from Nate Barthel, the Senior Manager in the ICT4D Business Development and Program Design team at CRS. We will also be having Sarah Muffley, the Learning and Training Advisor from IRC, and we will have Joseph Uma, the Senior Advisor for M&E Technology, also from IRC. Unfortunately, Nick is not going to be able to join us today as he is sick. So moving forward. Today's agenda, we're going to go over why you should centralize your software. What is CommCare's enterprise plan? What Dimagi has learned through this process, and then we'll get a very good insider's view from CRS and IRC, who've both been able to do this. And then we'll end with a Q&A. So why centralize? Centralizing your software and data collection tools means that your whole organization works from the same blueprint, avoiding discrepancies that can easily arise from having all different types of tools and softwares in one system. So a lot of the people that we work with, a lot of the INGOs that we work with are decentralized, and that's fine. That we have different HQs, we have different country offices, but then we have those country offices further decentralized in the fact that their different offices work on different types of projects. They might even have even further broken down thematic areas, and that's okay. But when you're looking to centralize your software for your data collection and implementation, it's key to bringing it all together. So when you are decentralized in the way that your software and data collection and implementation works, what you often end up with is country A collecting data with one software, country B using another software for their frontline worker workflows, and so on and so forth. With all of the different softwares being used within the organization, it is tough to build capacity within the organization on any given software or tool. So if your M&E lead for one project understands one software very well and puts it into the proposal, or the programs team or the BD team puts it into the proposal, and then that person ends up leaving, where's the capacity for that specific tool that one person chose to use? Where does the team go for support to how to learn how to use that tool? So what we're going to be discussing today is how can HQ combine all of the data and tell a global story which is through centralization. Is there a way to move data up the chain when data is able to move up the chain when you're using one software? It is difficult. It is very difficult to be decentralized. What you can end up with is ineffective frontline tools. And when your tools are ineffective, we know that they are not used. And when your data collection tools are not used, you end up with bad data. And bad data does not look good when you bring it up the chain of command back to your donor. Oftentimes that decentralization can create situations that can be easily avoided. You also have data security concerns. How safe is your data from software to software? Do all your softwares have DPAs? Are they all GDPR compliant? Is all the data encrypted at rest across the different softwares? And lastly, and what I think is most important, is then you have limited technical capacity at each rung of the chain, from country office to program office to sectoral office to regional office and back to HQ. Where's the support for across the different softwares that you use? So this leads me to what is the enterprise plan with CommCare? Our enterprise plan for CommCare is designed for INGOs who want a sustainable path towards improving their last mile data collection and service delivery practices across their organization. Our CommCare Enterprise offering allows INGOs to unlock all of CommCare's features across every country office and every program. It is tailored fit for your current and future needs. It allows you to access a customized number of advanced CommCare project spaces and mobile users at preferred pricing. And it allows you to be consistent with the maximum capabilities across all project spaces and country offices. CommCare's complete feature set allows you to develop sustainable organizational capacity, and it streamlines the management of your project spaces across different countries and programs. With Going Enterprise, you'll know that any application that you build in one project space can be used by any team anywhere. We also have high-touch capacity building through our CS or customer success team. Our enterprise partners get regular access to our customer success team for tailored guidance on how to maximize your return on investment associated with CommCare. Our CS team is evaluated based on the success they create for our enterprise partners. Accordingly, we do everything we can to ensure your success. We also have flexible billing. Our enterprise offering supports both centralized and decentralized or project level billing to fit your operating model. A lot of our enterprise partners prefer centralized billing because it is significantly more efficient than managing billing from individual project spaces or countries or projects. We also have an enterprise dashboard or console, which is what you can see. Part of it is what you can see here listed in the photo below. Our enterprise counselor dashboard is a centralized dashboard, which allows HQ staff to monitor overall analytics and usage of all their project spaces, while integrations with third-party products like Power BI, Tableau, and DHIS2 unlock the powerful reporting possibilities. You also have high-touch support. Our enterprise partners get a dedicated account manager so that we are always intimate with your current needs and future aspirations, which enables us to be effective at helping you succeed. Finally, our enterprise partners are integrated into our SaaS product management practice, where you get to provide inputs to our roadmap planning and get early access to new features, which helps to contribute in user. You also get to contribute in user testing and have direct access to our product managers and designers, which allows you to continue to have feedback into our product management feedback. So what have we learned as Damagi? There is no one way to centralize your software system. That is why it is important to have a flexible offering that can interact with other systems. With CommCare, you're not only getting our software, but you're getting keys to unlock further possibilities. By having a centralized system that can interact with others, it's key. When you use CommCare, you have access to our robust API stack to push or pull data into secondary systems. You can create a full project implementation and data collection ecosystem all in one. Our enterprise users are our power users. Their product feedback is key to ensuring that CommCare continues to be the leading choice for data collection and service delivery. And this is why we are here today, to hear how our community of practice within our enterprise users have been able to centralize CommCare. Next, I'm going to be handing it over to Nate, who will outline what CRS has done.
So hi, everyone. Yeah, thanks, Amy. I think a lot of what I'll be sharing today will resonate with what you just talked about. So I'm very, very honored to be able to share today, share our experiences. First, an apology. As many of us are working from home, there is some construction going on around here, so you may hear some banging. Hopefully it's not too loud. Second, so what I'm about to present is actually a result of a lot of hard work from a lot of people at CRS over the years. So this is really to their credit and all the work that they've done over the years. So I'm just sharing what they've all done. So let's get into it and talk about CRS's experience with centralized administration of CommCare. All right. So first, why bother with enterprise at all? And here's some things that I've heard over the years. I've been with CRS now for I think 8 years. The first thing is I can download, insert your favorite open source tool for free. Second is we have experts in our country who know why tool, and we don't really need any support. And the third, this is more recent actually, is it's easier for us to manage contracts at the country level, to control those contracts with vendors. Now, at face value, I think all of these are valid statements, but I think they're really valid at more of the country or project level, and that's not what CRS wanted to do. CRS really wanted to be able to have a tool adopted at the enterprise level. We wanted CommCare to be used across the organization and not just in one country program or one project. So a couple quick responses to these these statements. As probably all of you know, technology is never free. Even if you can download the tool for free, there's costs associated with hosting, management, and all those things that go into breathing life into it. And echoing what Amy had mentioned earlier, you know, yes, if you have experts in your country, that's great, but what if they leave? I think a lot of us know that in the NGO, INGO space, there's a lot of turnover. A lot of people are moving from project to project, perhaps country to country. And we want an organization that excels at the use of the tool, not just a particular project or country. And the last one about managing contracts. Yeah, within a context of some donors, I've dealt with this with Global Fund, for example, it can be a bit frustrating for country programs because they want to know, okay, where did we get this pricing from? What's the justification, all of those things. And so we at HQ see it as part of our responsibility and our job to provide that information to the country program so that they can then respond to the donors. So for the next couple of slides here, I'm going to talk about some of the benefits of and enablers of centralized administration. So obviously first, you know, things that help scale. So one thing that I think has been a huge carrot benefit tool to scaling CommCare across CRS, and perhaps CRS is unique in this, is that we pay for licenses centrally. We pay for project spaces, mobile workers, web users centrally. There is some upper threshold. Eventually, if a project is using so many, they're going to have to pay. But for the most part, for 99.9%, those are free to the projects. Obviously, CRS pays for those. And so what does that do? That encourages adoption. So instead of a project saying, hey, this tool is too expensive, I can download, you know, whatever for free, to them, it's free. Again, not to CRS, but to the project. And so discourages adoption of other technologies. I'm going to talk more about this second point later, but we do have a centralized support structure with a lot of deep in-house capacity. And this has really helped scale the use of this tool across the organization, because once they have access to the tool, they're going to need help. They're going to need help in figuring out how to use it, how to set up case management and optimize it, and all of these things that make this tool unique. And so we have that support structure in place. And then one of the benefits is as we have more usage across CRS of CommCare, the skills are more easily transferable between projects and countries, just because people are familiar with the tool. So that also kind of is a reinforcing effect. A second component for centralized administration is the aspect of cost. I wish I could say it's cheaper. I actually don't know whether it would be cheaper or not, but at least we can manage the cost, and we have insight into the cost. So we can and do carefully monitor license usage across the organization, down to the mobile worker. And this is actually something we spend a lot of time on. And so that's really important in managing cost. We potentially reduce duplication. If there's a number of projects that all have separate agreements with Dimagi, there's a lot of duplication there. There's a lot of duplication in terms of legalese, frameworks. There's a lot of duplication in terms of relationship management with Dimagi. There's a lot of duplication potentially in licenses. Perhaps there's unused licenses in one project that could be used in another. So that helps in reducing duplication. And obviously, when you have all of your licenses, et cetera, in one place, you could potentially take advantage of volume pricing. And lastly, something that we've learned the hard way is we really needed to double down on improving our security and optimization. I won't go into the details here, but we had an incident several years ago, actually on another platform. And it really made us do some soul searching about how we managed our platforms, and really drove us to more centralized management of our platforms. And so what we can do and do is control roles and access to CommCare centrally. And as I've mentioned earlier, we can also monitor the use of project spaces, mobile workers, and web users to make sure that they're optimally used. All right, so I'm going to dig a little bit further into several of these the nuts and bolts, or the what it looks like within CRS in terms of the enterprise approach. And so I'll start with the legal stuff. What do we have in place? And then I'll talk about administration support and then project closeout. Okay, so first for the legal stuff. CRS basically has 2 agreements in place. Typically, they would have about 3-year duration, I believe. The first one, called the Product Subscription Agreement, it has a bunch of legalese and stuff in there, but essentially that's the one that says, what do you pay for X number of project spaces, Y number of web users, and Z number of mobile workers. So it defines the rate. It also defines, if we see increased demand, which we have, what it costs to purchase additional bundles. So that's useful in terms of flexibility. The second agreement is CRS's master service agreement with Dimagi. And this is where it captured rates for Dimagi professional services. Now, honestly, at CRS, we don't use this very often. I think mostly 90%, maybe more of the time, we rely on internal capacity. But anyway, we have it in place should we need it. Okay, so let's look at the centralized administration and take a look at the provisioning. What you're seeing here is actually a screen grab of our ServiceNow platform. It's what CRS uses to manage all software and hardware requests at CRS. So people go in, they say, I want to request a phone, I want to request access to Adobe or CommCare. In this case, you can see what's available for CommCare. So we do control essentially access for web users, custom roles. We want to make sure that we review what kind of roles are being requested and created. We obviously centrally control requests for new project spaces. And for a while, this was quite popular, but it's died down a bit, but requests for SMS services. So this is a couple of benefits here. One, it allows for central control. Now, there's downsides to that because it takes a little bit more time for projects, country programs to gain access to these because there's some due diligence that takes place. But we felt it was necessary to do this to put in place the proper security measures. Beyond security, it also allows us to gather a lot of meta information about the projects that are helpful in periodic reviews and monitoring usage, particularly when we're getting towards project closure. As I mentioned, we wanted to standardize on our roles and make sure that we had a set of roles that were appropriate and well thought out for our needs, that they had the permissions that were required and no more. And we have some documentation here that describes what these roles are and the process for requesting custom roles. As I've mentioned a couple of times, centralized administration allows for monitoring, and this is super useful. So what you're seeing here is a screen grab, Power BI actually, of our usage across across the regions, number of project spaces, and we can get down to all sorts of details. But this is just really important in terms of just overall monitoring of usage. And then something that I guess perhaps a downside of saying, okay, the licenses are free to the projects is that there becomes a lot of demand, which is good and fine. But sometimes people request, I don't know, whatever, 20 web users when they need 3, or the project has come to a close and they haven't actually closed out that project space. And so what we do quite frequently is a cleanup. So what you see here on the left is project start and end dates. As we approach the end date, we will reach out proactively to the projects to say, okay, do you still need this project space? If not, then we can guide them through the process of retiring. The picture on the right is essentially that same process, but down at the web user, mobile worker level. So I forget the exact threshold, but I think it's 6 months if they haven't logged in or used those accounts, those licenses, then we'll reach out and say, hey, we're going to shut these down unless you really need them. So there's a lot of continuous cleanup to make sure that we're carefully managing the license load, because we will quickly bump up against upper limits of what the enterprise agreement has in place. We want to be we want to manage that carefully and use resources optimally. A bit about our support structure. And maybe one aside, actually, a lot of this stuff we've captured and codified in something called a Service Operations Guide, which basically says how do we maintain and manage the system, and talks about what do we do at the different tier levels. So starting at tier 1, that's our basic frontline support, request for help in acquiring access to CommCare, basic troubleshooting, those types of things. At tier 2, we actually have very robust tier 2 that does a lot of our troubleshooting. If there's issues, challenges, whether it's a bug or whether it's user error or whatever, we do a lot at tier 2 to help our teams use a tool effectively, and particularly when they bump into troubles. Our tier 2 also manage issue escalation to Dimagi's team and manages tracks their resolution. And then tier 3, which I'll talk about in a second, this is not so much an issue resolution team, but we have a team of regional solution engineers and a pretty strong folks at the country program who can support TR's projects globally. And so just a snapshot of the activities at tier 3 here. You can see sort of the team of who they're assigned to. It says over on the right, it says issues filtered 55. So those are the active projects that our HQ team is supporting. So we're either helping them design forms, doing some design review, more often than not, some sort of capacity building or training. It's almost always part of what we do. So very, very active team, and a lot of support given to our country programs and projects. This is just actually one person, but this is a snapshot of the tickets. He's gone through and actually categorized these by different types of issues. This is also useful in terms of kind of retrospective analysis. What are the types of issues we're seeing? Are there persistent issues in a certain area? Is it something that we need to work with Dimagi on? Is it something that could be clarified with better documentation? So having that information is very, very useful. And then finally, project closeout. This is actually something that's much newer and we're still grappling with, but we have established a process to download and anonymize the data and then archive that data on our internal Salesforce instance, what we use for managing all of our project information, particularly around proposal development, but also key documents along the life of the project. And so we assist them through this process of anonymization and then archival. Yeah, that's about it. Just closing thoughts here. Standardizing on a platform accelerates competence, reduces risks, and makes good use of limited resources. And an enterprise approach is the foundation for standardization. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Nate. And now we'll be hearing from IRC.
So Joseph and I are going to talk about the CommCare Enterprise license that we have at International Rescue Committee. So first, a little bit about IRC. Our mission is to help people whose lives and livelihoods are shattered by conflict and disaster to survive, recover, and gain control of their future. And we do that by implementing high-impact, cost-effective programs for people affected by crisis. In more than 40 countries and over 20 US cities, our teams provide clean water, shelter, healthcare, education, and empowerment support to refugees and displaced people. And the map on this slide shows where we work in the world. So why did we go enterprise? We adopted our CommCare Enterprise license on April 6th of 2020. We have a centralized payment process, and and all of our everything is paid through New York HQ. We currently have 40 project spaces, and we're growing. To request spaces, projects use a form that gives like an overview of why they're requesting and what their needs are. Joseph?
Thank you, Sarah. So as Sarah's just mentioned, we adopted CommCare back last year. So before that, of course, we had IRC programs across IRC used various technologies, as for instance, COBOL, Survey CTO, and some different instances. These came with their own challenges, which prompted us to basically adopt the enterprise plan for CommCare. Some of those advantages included the hassle in processing decentralized payments to various providers, and basically data from across different programs was sitting in sort of silos and couldn't communicate with each other. And we had a lot of duplicated efforts in collecting our data. And it was not generally easy to have a holistic, I'm thinking organizational-wide kind of analysis across our data. Next, sir. So due to that, some of the features, I wanted to mention a few features that CommCare has really given us and have enabled some of the work we're trying to do. One of them is the case management feature, which is very key to us. It has basically enabled us to link forms and track projects or activities, subjects, and do analysis over time. And this has vastly allowed us to reduce duplicated data collection, and thus improving quality of the data that we collect across the organization. And we enjoy stuff like being able to automate stuff, like when you need to go back and do a follow-up visit to some cases. In the next slide, I just want to show some few instances where we have used this feature. And the first one there, basically from when you register clients, for instance, in cash assistance, you can basically be able to manage that biodata, and you can manage their visits. You can create warnings, basically alerting your field teams on when next visits are due, such kind of things. And you basically also have extra features, like you can filter a list of schools if it's an education program to show only those which are eligible for improvement grants. Basically, we had a larger spectrum of options in terms of managing our case-based kind of programs. Next time. So another advantage that we have leveraged widely across IRC is the data feeds. Building on that to integrate with Power BI across the organization. A lot of our tools, and some of them we call them the toolkits. We have an array of products which are basically global across the organization. So leveraging these features enabled us to really put our data in order and then use the integration, which is quite easy between these two products, and do sort of organization-wide data analysis and visualization. Over to you, Sarah.
Thanks, Joseph. So let's talk about the support that we get from the Dimagi team as part of our enterprise license. So we get the first line of support for technical questions according to our service level agreement, comes at no cost to IRC users. The types of requests handled by Dimagi support are for CommCare bugs, which that are not related to a specific app or a project, but just CommCare in general. And then CommCare questions like about particular features and their use, but not necessarily as they apply to a particular project or app. And then the app specific questions. So if we have questions about something that has to do with the app that we've created or our project space's configuration and workflow, we can ask about that. Our team also has regular check-ins with Dimagi to discuss any issues we're having and share feature requests. And we have access to Dimagi Academy. So it's the online learning center for folks to learn more about how to use CommCare. Now, as for the support that we provide our users at IRC, we have a series of self-directed online courses. These are a series of video tutorials developed by and for IRC staff on how to do the most common tasks that they'll have to do in CommCare. So these videos are divided into 3 courses, which are housed on Kaya, the learning management system for NGOs. And there's one course, which is CommCare for enumerators, which goes through collecting data on a mobile device. And we have a demo application that we created and a demo login for learners to log into CommCare on their phones or tablets and practice collecting data in a form. We also have a course on called Fundamentals for Web Users, which goes through an introduction to CommCare HQ and goes through how to add and manage web users, mobile workers, how to monitor mobile worker activity, looking through reports, how to export data, how to import data using lookup tables, but it's not so much about form construction. And then we have a third course on form building, which walks a user through creating an application from start to finish in CommCare HQ. We also have dedicated regional support staff. So we've recently established the role of senior specialist for M&E technology to support M&E tech in each region. So these folks are responsible for end user training, and they have been doing some interesting things like the West Africa CommCare Challenge, which is going on right now. Our M&E teams in countries in our West Africa region were tasked with going through these CommCare courses on Kaya and creating a demo application based on what they've learned. And I'm not entirely sure how the challenge is being scored. I think it has to do with who finishes first, but also, it'll involve the kind of application that they create. So our senior specialists are creating some fun ways for folks to learn CommCare. And then finally, as Joseph mentioned previously, we have toolkits, which are essentially like a one-stop shop for certain interventions. So if a country program is running an intervention for client satisfaction, for instance, we have a ready-made CommCare application that they can use to do that project. So countries don't have to create CommCare applications from scratch if they're doing a similar project that's been done before. So this is so users can adopt CommCare with minimal effort in their programs, and it gets to what Joseph was saying earlier about streamlining data. So that is all for us on the IRC side, and I will turn it back over to Amy.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Nate. I'm going to be handing it over to Erin for the Q&A session. Just a reminder, if you do have a question, to put it into the Q&A section down at the bottom. Thank you. Go ahead, Erin.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you to everyone who has already submitted questions. I know that Dave and Delphine have been going through and answering some of them. I might ask some of them live as well. So Nate, I believe Dave answered this in the box, but I just wanted you to add some color to it. Someone had asked what system you guys use internally at IRC to track your tickets. And if it was separate from the Demagi support ticket queue, it is separate from the Demagi support queue. But if you could tell us what you guys are doing internally, what system you use internally, that would be great.
Is that directed at me?
What system you're using to track your tickets internally?
Oh, yeah. So I had mentioned a system, ServiceNow, which we use for requesting products and services. We can also use that to track tickets internally, and we do that across all our platforms, whether it's CommCare, Power BI, or what have you.
Wonderful, thanks. And then this is for the IRC team from Rushmi at Trocare. She's asking how your Power BI integration works and if all in-country meal colleagues use Power BI for analysis or if you use anything else.
Yeah, thanks. So that has been quite well and smooth. So as an organization, we are trying to roll out the two technologies, Power BI for data visualization, and that is an initiative which is ongoing. But so far, for the global initiative that we have undertaken, that integration with CommCare has worked quite well. I know we've had instances where we got limitations. For instance, the number of data feeds that you get. And those are some of the things we have been discussing with the Demagi in the support meetings, and we are getting the right guidance around those ones. Program level data analysis would be happening in other applications, as you can imagine. I think different programs might have different needs, but we are moving to a space where we want Power BI to enable our programs, do defined kind of analysis of their data. So it's work in progress. It's slowly coming up. Thanks.
Thanks, Joseph, for that. Another question that David had asked, and I think he said that, Nate, you did clarify a little, but I was wondering if you could speak more about it. So he's asking what percentage of your projects you actually contract with Demagi to build out versus building internally. And I know, just because I've worked with you for a long time, I know that that has changed from when you started maybe 5 years ago till now. So I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have an exact figure. There have been a couple I'm aware of, maybe a year or two ago in East Africa, that we worked with your professional services team. As of today, I'm not aware if we have any that were engaged with Demagi. I could be wrong. I don't manage those activities, but percentage-wise, very low, very few. A lot of what we support is primarily internal. I mentioned the regional solution engineers, plus a lot of folks at the country program level are able to use the tool effectively. So primarily for, I'd say one thing we haven't used much is I know that CommCare supports a lot of media, and we haven't done a lot of that. So if we were to do more of that in the future, I think we'd have to rely on support from Demagi. But for case management and stuff like that, I think most of that is internal.
Yeah, and coming from someone who works at Demagi formally on our services team, I would echo what Nate said, that maybe in early days we worked with them a little more closely, but now they really internally just have such rich expertise that there's hardly anything that they can't do themselves, which is great. So that's what we hope for all of you. We hope that we make ourselves obsolete. Then we had a question about cost effectiveness, and wondering if you guys could share your experiences with that. So I don't know if that, I think, could go either to IRC or Nate, to you as well.
I'm happy to have a stab at it. I mean, that always comes up with technology platforms. Is what's the value, what's the cost effectiveness? I imagine it varies, frankly, from project to project. Some where the introduction of digital tools adds a lot of value, and others perhaps not so much. I don't think this is anything particular for any platform, CommCare or otherwise. I think it's just true across kind of using technology. And I think there tends to be a lot of focus on cost, but I think there's significant benefits to digitization, particularly around the transparency of activities, and speedness of quickness of getting data. So I can't give you, a specific statistic, but I think that's something that would have to be taken on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah, and I can add one more thing, which is that think about, this gets back to Nathan's presentation about how technology is never free. And think about if you're using a free tool that has some data collection functionality versus CommCare, but you want to use the free tool because it's free, but it doesn't do all the sophisticated things that you want it to do. And so some staff members, work really hard on it and hack it a little bit to make the free tool more complex. And think about those staff members' salaries, and if that time and the proportion of their work that they're devoting to this could be devoted to other things, and you can save money on whatever you're paying that staff member, they can be doing other things instead of hacking a free data collection tool, as opposed to using the sophisticated one that we have from CommCare.
Yeah, thank you guys both for that. And I will say too, just from a purely licensing perspective, when you go enterprise and you buy in bulk, there is a discount for that as well. So even on its face, the licenses are a little less expensive. And then of course, we hope that the real benefit you see is from institutionalizing the same tool across all of your offices. Then the next question that I have here was actually for CRS. They're wondering about how you do your data cleaning, if you do that within CommCare or in your analysis tool.
I'm probably not the best person to answer that. I don't believe we typically do that in CommCare, but more on the analysis side. So I don't think I'm offending the Dimagi team by saying CommCare is not a data visualization tool. So we use pretty much almost always Power BI, and I think that's where we do a lot of our cleaning. In some cases where we have a lot of different data sources, we use a staging database to pull data in there to clean it or shampoo it, as an older colleague of mine used to say, and do any transformations necessary, and then display that on the data visualization tool.
I think that resonates what I've talked with your team about too, Nate. Some of those bulk things I know that they do in Power BI. I always say it's really up to the comfort of your team. I work primarily in CommCare. I always want that data source to be kind of the source of truth. And so I have a little bit of a strong preference for cleaning within CommCare, but a lot of folks will find it easier to clean within Power BI or within whatever analysis tool you're using. So it really is your choice, and it a lot of times come down to the comfort of the user in whatever software they prefer to do it in. Nate, sorry, another one for you. They want to know a little bit more about how CommCare integrates with other enterprise tech solutions that CRS uses. So for example, can you overlay CommCare data with financials or other organizational information to draw insights across your different business units like finance, program administration, biz dev, and meal?
Well, yeah. Yes, I'm sure you can. Could I give you a specific example of where we've done that? I'm not sure I could, but there's no reason why you couldn't take CommCare data and combine that with other information, financial or otherwise, to have more advanced insight into what you're doing. I would say that one thing that we are using, so CRS is investing heavily in this big back office system for managing finance, HR, and supply chain. And for the last mile or last kilometer, we will be using CommCare to help track delivery of goods between warehouses and to final distribution points. I don't know if that quite answers your question, but certainly we do use that with other tools. So that would be used in this case directly with Oracle. So.
Great. Now a question that I would actually love both teams to answer, and it might be kind of the ultimate question after hearing these presentations, is when it comes to an organization who's trying to replicate your models, both in terms of data collection and centralizing and visualizations, how feasible do you think that is for other organizations to do?
It's a pretty open-ended question. So how feasible? I mean, we did it, so I think it's quite feasible. It obviously takes resources. I think CRS is, reasonable size organization. So I guess to start, if I were to start from scratch, what is the vision? What do you want as an organization? What are the benefits you want out of that? And then to start think about it, what are some of the tools that we can get in place to reach that vision? So for example, as I mentioned earlier, CRS really did want centrally managed platforms. We didn't want a proliferation of different platforms and people doing all sorts of different things. So that was a priority. So then what did we do to achieve that? Well, a couple of things. One, I think two major things that I touched on is one, the payment centrally of licenses. That's a big driver in enterprise-wide adoption, and then providing support. So people need support, and so we invested heavily in a support team to do that. And so I think if you have a smaller organization, you can do the same thing just at a smaller level. So perhaps instead of having a team of 4 or 5 that are supporting around the globe, maybe a team of 1 or 2. Yeah, my initial thoughts.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah, Aaron.
Yep.
Yeah, just to add on what Nate just said, I think there's also a resource which is driven by Dimagi. Like for instance, I remember when I joined, you linking us with, for instance, other organizations who want to do similar stuff, just sharing those. I think for people looking to replicate, those would be some resources in terms of adopting best practices and basically sharing.
Yeah, definitely. Nate, I liked your answer that we did it, so obviously it's feasible. Dave and I and the rest of us on this webinar from the Dimagi end, we have these conversations every week with organizations about, can we centralize, can we institutionalize, can we go enterprise? And I would say where there's a will, there's a way. I don't want to minimize the amount of work it is. Certainly, like if you look at IRC's example, one thing that took a lot of work was actually looking at going from a very decentralized payment system to very centralized. That took a lot of folks at IRC advocating for this sort of a system and really having to, speak to the decision makers and say, this is something that's worth doing. So it's not something that's going to come easy if you don't want it, but it's certainly something that, if your team buys into it, you can do. And Nate, I appreciate what you said. Not every organization is the size of CRS, but you can centralize and institutionalize at the size that your organization is. So for example, Rashmi, I know you're on this webinar. She works at TroCare, who's another enterprise customer of ours. And right now she's their main point person, and they're about to perhaps add another staff member. But for them and at their scale, that's what works for them. And she provides excellent support to her teams and to the country offices that she works with. So it's not that, the takeaway shouldn't be, I need to go hire 10 people if I want to go enterprise. It should be, look at the staff, look at how we could organize ourselves to support the countries that we're currently working in. Wonderful. So next, there's a few logistical things. People have asked if there will be a recording of this call afterwards. Yes, definitely. We will send out a recording of this. And also, like our last webinar, we will be sending out a recording that has French on it as well. So Delphine, who you met in the beginning, will be translating that for us as well. Let me go through. We've answered a bunch of these. We had some questions about courses being offered in other languages. Our Dimagi Academy courses are in Spanish and French. Right now, just our CommCare Fundamentals course is in English, Spanish, and French, but the app building course and the calculations course will also be coming out in French in the next few months. Someone asked if inside of CommCare we can have indicator performance tracking. Absolutely. There are ways that you can calculate hidden values within forms that then you can easily export either into Power BI or Tableau or just into an Excel export and do some analysis on this. Nate, you might not want to answer this in specifics, but someone asked how many active mobile and web users you guys have.
I don't think there's any major issues in sharing. I'm looking at it right now. Web users, 2,400, and mobile workers, just under 10,000.
We're hoping soon that you guys will break the 10,000 mark. That'll be a fun milestone to celebrate with you guys. Someone asked, and I know that Dave answered, if you can aggregate data across multiple countries. So for instance, they brought up the example of if you had, if you wanted to measure child nutrition outcomes across 3 different projects in 3 different countries, could you do that? The answer is definitely yes. There are a lot of different ways you can do that, depending on kind of what analysis software you're using and what those applications look like. But I'm curious, not to put any of you guys on the spot, but IRC or CRS, do you guys have examples of projects where you're looking across different countries at similar indicators?
Yeah, we do. And so first of all, it's not a technology issue at all. It's getting standard indicators in place and keeping people from changing their forms to whatever they want locally. So we actually have a big effort underway. I think it's changed its name, but was called Global Agency Results, which is exactly that, standardizing some key indicators that we collect and aggregating these up to the HQ leadership level. But again, all the work that went into that was not a technology effort. It was more of a standardization of indicators, and yeah, that's where the effort was.
Joseph, did I see you wanted to say something too?
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm that that's absolutely correct. I think the bulk of work is actually not technology, but standardizing data and indicators.
Thank you. You guys that's music to my ears. That's what I always tell people too, that the tech part is going to be the easiest part of it. That it's going to be the kind of conversations that you have with all of those country offices and making sure that they're collecting that data in a standard way. I'll also say just to add to that, our last webinar was about building global M&E systems, and we did talk about this. And there is a recording of that webinar online that would be great for you to check out too. You can hear Mala Ram from Goal and Monica Lopez from Child Fund, who are other enterprise customers of ours that have actually gone through and worked towards building out some of those standard indicators across their projects. So I'll go ahead and send you that recording as well. I would suggest that you check that out. Sarah, I'm sorry, did I cut you off? I thought I saw you on.
Yeah, I was just going to add one thing. So part of standardizing our indicators at IRC is we have an internal indicator selection tool, which is on our intranet. So when you're starting a project and you're looking at indicators to measure, you can go to the indicator selection tool and make sure that what you want to measure, the language of it is aligned with what's in the indicator selection tool, just so that everything is standardized.
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Sarah. We also got a question for the IRC team that after working with CommCare for 1 year, after adopting it enterprisely for 1 year, you've obviously matured and now have this very robust system. And so they're just wondering what are some good practices you could share from us. So maybe some of your top lessons learned from that first year.
Well, this is a funny question because Joseph and I only started at IRC last spring and summer. So the first year of enterprise license was my first year at IRC. But from my perspective, my role was in learning and training for monitoring and evaluation. So it's just really important to devote time and resources to getting people to learn how to use the tool, to set the expectation early that this is what we're going to use, and it's okay to take time to learn it. It is scary at first. It's complicated, and we are going to, as a team, learn this together. That's part of why we developed these regional senior specialist roles for M&E technology to provide that resource.
Great, thank you. And actually, we had a related question, Sarah, which is, if you are a user at IRC who wants to use CommCare, what does that initial licensing look like? And then how do you guys train that new person or those new people that are coming on?
I'll let Joseph answer the licensing question, but for training, those courses on Kaya that I mentioned, the Kaya, the learning management system, those are open to all IRC employees, and they are self-directed, so you can log in to Kaya using your IRC single sign-on and enroll in the course and start practicing collecting data in a form that already exists, and creating a form we have a demo project space for training purposes, so people can create forms on their own.
Yeah, so in terms of the process, like Sarah shared in the presentation initially, we have a form hosted in the IRC cloud, basically, so programs get to fill the form, just specifying, the kind of program, what they'll be doing, the users, the basic information you basically need to make a decision on how to get which kind of license or space to get them. Then that gets to be processed centrally. We do process that. And payment for the spaces is actually done centrally, as we mentioned before, but the programs get to get billed back within IRC.
Yeah, I do think that's one thing that's different about these two models is that CRS pays centrally and funds it centrally, whereas IRC does back bill its individual countries. So we know that certainly cost can be a barrier to this sometimes. So with just 1 minute left, I will actually toss back to Amy just to give some closing remarks and let folks know what they can do after this webinar.
Thank you, Erin, and thank you to Nate, Joseph, and Sarah. This is a great opportunity to hear from some of our enterprise users. I just wanted to finish up by saying that if you have any questions around how you can go enterprise or any of the questions that weren't answered, one, we will be sending answers to some of the questions that were not answered live, so you expect that. But also, you can always email your point of contact at Dimagi, and if you do not have a point of contact at Dimagi, you can email info@dimagi.com and we'll get back to you. So thank you again. It's been a great webinar. Really looking forward to some of the conversations that will come of this. And thanks again to Nate, Joseph, and Sarah for their contributions today. Have a good week.
Great. Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Thank you.